go. Thank you so much. Hello, world. What is up? Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Matt Forte. We are here live at the Build Studio in New York City. Our next guest star in an incredible retelling of the Dickens classic, A Christmas Carol. The series has a slightly darker twist compared to prior renditions, which in turn makes these iconic characters feel more real and human than ever. FX's A Christmas Carol is being called a spine-tingling immersion into Scrooge's dark night of the soul. This thing is dark. It is wild. It is amazing. It premieres this Thursday. Joining us now to tell us all about it, none other than Ebenezer and Bob Cratchit themselves. Guy Pearce and Joe Alwyn are here, guys. How about that? You excited? I'm excited. They're pretty hyped. This movie's nuts. We're going to bring them out in just a second. But first, I believe we have a trailer for the film. So let's go ahead and run that clip.
I sense you are angry with me.
Why do you say that?
Because everything on this page is perfect. Precise, immaculate, you might say. You got it all right to spite me, to show me.
No, sir, no, to afford you the possibility that since all the work is done correctly and early, I might leave early. Spend the rest of the day with my family.
Your anger made you work quickly, but perfectly. You didn't stop to think that working quickly and perfectly also suits me, the object of your hatred, down to the ground.
I don't hate you, sir. I'm not accustomed to talking about these matters with you. I ask you again, is everything all right with you?
Christmas, it seems, inspires such emotion. Good and, evidently, bad.
Ladies and gentlemen, Guy Pearce and Joe Alwyn right here. Come on, make some noise. Congratulations. I'm really excited to talk to you guys about this. And I was laughing a little bit at the "I don't hate you" line, because I don't think we've ever seen Bob Cratchit played in such a way where the hate is just so... You can see how thin the wall is between how he really feels and what he has to say to his boss. And you guys are just astounding in this. I loved it. I think you guys are great. So I'm excited to talk to you. Congratulations. How you doing? How's things going? How's life right now?
Life is good. It's rainy. It's cold. It's good.
That's pretty good, yeah. I think we've both been working on different projects since then, and it's always good to catch up, though. Yeah. So
that's always fun.
We're good mates,
you
unlike
guys...
unlike the clip would indicate.
How long ago did you guys film this? A couple of months, right?
April, May, wasn't it?
Oh,
Yep, this summer.
Yeah. So it's always nice. You do a project, you walk off, you go do other things, and now you guys get to come hang out again, kind of go around, reminisce.
And they've had their work cut out for them finishing the visual effects, to get it ready for now. So it's, quite a task.
Well, it looks stunning, and we'll get into all of that. Let's start at the top, man. Here we have this classic story. There's practically a new version for every year since it's ever been in existence. Like, so many people have tackled it. What was it about this take that got you guys hooked into it? And you were like, yeah, I want to be a part of this. I want to tell it this way.
Well, it's the writing, really. Yeah. And it's just, it's just a different take. It's just the fact that it's just beautifully written. And I mean, I've talked about that, I don't know all the other versions, and so I don't know how different it is to all the other versions. We know it's darker than other versions. Yeah. It's pretty heavy. But I think that was it, really, ultimately.
Yeah, Steve is just such a good writer. He obviously wrote Peaky Blinders, and it's kind of far more in that kind of murkier, darker London. And what he does in this one, particularly, he goes into Scrooge's own past and his own pain, which Guy can talk about more than me, but looks at why he's become the man that he's become. And that often takes it into some quite uncomfortable areas and scenarios that haven't been explored before.
Well, it's funny. You talk about how familiar some people are, some people aren't. I grew up with the Muppet version, was like the one that I'd seen when I was a kid. This is the other side.
Kermit's in this one too.
He is. He does.
So he's back.
That's a spoiler.
After the credits.
He does. Yeah, he's the stinger. He's the post-credit stinger for the sequel.
That's his hand there, actually.
Ravages of time have taken even our friend Kermit, yes. But no, what I was going to say, though, is when you come into a project like this, did you guys at all revisit the original text? Or does that fill in the gaps for you? Does that complicate things? Or do you just stick to what Stephen hands you?
I wanted to get hold of the original text just to sort of remind myself, I suppose, at least of that, because I'd questioned whether I would go back and look at other versions. And I sort of looked at maybe some trailers for some other versions. Went, okay, that looks like that. Oh, that actor was in it. Oh, okay, there's that one. And I thought, no, I don't really want to dig back in and go through all of these because I didn't want to give myself that much work, and I also didn't want to sort of jeopardize my own work on this. But I thought what I will do is get hold of the actual source material and have that. And what's interesting, obviously, the style of writing is sort of different from back then than it is now. But you can see how this beautiful piece of writing can be open to interpretation. So, in a way, that made more sense on a more intellectual level as to how there can be so many different versions and why ours is the way that it is. So that was interesting to me to have that by the bed. I could just read that occasionally. Yeah.
What about you, Joe? Did you take a look at it at all?
I reread the book. I'm sure I must have read it, years ago. But
at some point, we were all asked to read it for school.
Yeah,
like
that was
it happened
probably
at some point.
Exactly. But yeah, I flicked through it again, but mainly just so I felt like I was doing my homework. But I feel like, Steve's version was so complete and kind of singular unto itself and so rich. There was so much to go off in that. And Nick Murphy, our director, was brilliant in kind of talking about his vision and what he wanted from us. That was the main thing to latch onto. But I haven't really seen previous iterations. I never really grew up watching them. I'm aware I've got the frog as the competition, but other than that, it was these scripts. Yeah.
You mentioned the frog being your competition. Is that something that even though you didn't grow up with them, like was that something your friends were telling you, like when you got the role that the Kermit was good?
Yeah, but I've just never
was the
seen
yang
it.
to your yin?
I'll watch it one day and work out where I went wrong.
That's what I should have done.
Are you a big Christmas person in general, Guy? I know I had read somewhere, and I have a million questions just about this, that you don't typically have a tree. You said you have a large giraffe that you decorate.
Yeah, I do actually. I have a big, yeah.
What? Yeah, that's my first question. What?
Yeah, I do have a giraffe. I have this beautiful, it's made of wire, and it's about 3.5 meters tall, and it's a giraffe. It's sort of a piece of art, and it's yellow, and her name is Misty. And she's enormous, and so I'll just put some tinsel around her, and But now that I have a 3-year-old boy, his mum is wanting to, put up a tree, etc. So I'm now getting back into the Christmas tree.
See, I didn't know if the giant giraffe decorate was in response to if that was like, all right, I have a 3-year-old boy now, I got to do something. I guess I'll decorate the giraffe.
No, I had the giraffe probably 15 years ago, and I couldn't be bothered really putting up a tree. So I thought, we'll just decorate Misty. She looks good with the Christmas Santa hat on. And some tinsel wrapped around her legs and stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
Was that one of those like purchases that? What? This is the last question I asked.
Maybe not 15, maybe 10 years ago.
Okay,
Where did she come from?
Yeah,
she's a designer in Melbourne, in Australia, an art designer who does all sorts of animals with wire, but really just beautiful style. Yeah, really great.
Very cool. All right, well, good. Thank you. I was very curious about that. Joe, what about you, man? Christmas, is it a big deal for you as well, or
There's no giraffes.
no giraffes? Sadly, no.
Yeah, I mean it's a fun time of the year. It's not crazy, but we have a tree and
Christmas pudding,
a few little Christmas family traditions. I was mentioning earlier there's a park in London called Hampstead Heath, which has these big ponds on it, and almost every year we go and we jump in the pond in the morning, which is pretty freezing and pretty not very sensible.
Is that everyone? Is that just your family, or is that everyone from the area? Is it like a?
Yeah, no, anyone can go.
The Alwyns are at it again. They're all jumping in the pond.
Right. There's Joe's
There
family.
they go.
Or like, are there hundreds of people jumping in the ponds? Or
There's quite a lot.
Is
yeah.
there? Right,
Yeah,
okay.
everyone puts. You can wear a Christmas hat and jump in, but if you don't get out quickly, then you're not
Is
coming
Is it
at all.
is it
Never
like a
getting out.
fundraiser or is it just a fun thing?
No,
it's
it's just
there's no money,
what you
yeah.
do if you. Yeah,
That's it.
I mean, why not?
Yeah,
I mean, there are reasons not to.
Well, there's
but,
plenty,
yeah.
I guess, a long list, in fact. But
Really
that's amazing.
cold?
Well, let me, we taught just very briefly touched on this, but the vision, Nick's vision and Steve, it's so precise and so specific, and the tone of this. I'm curious if you dialed into that kind of right away, or if you kind of had to calibrate as you were going and find it, because it is different, and like you said. Not as familiar with the previous versions, but you're doing your own thing. But very specifically, what they've written, this feels like its own universe and its own world.
I think you dial in right away into the nature of the world and how heavy it is, and the reality of the scenarios that we're taken back through in Scrooge's life, and obviously for Joe, the predicament that his family's in, etc. But I think the thing for me that actually I had to really sort of change was that I suppose I slipped into thinking of Scrooge in the way that we all tend to think of Scrooge as this kind of wizened up old man who's sort of fearful of life, who really doesn't have anything to do with anybody anymore and is sort of running away from life. Whereas what the guys were wanting to portray was somebody who was more muscular and robust. And muscular, I suppose, I don't mean literally muscular, but I just mean as far as his attitude and his willingness to sort of be part of life and be quite confronting himself, as opposed to somebody who's sort of, hiding in the shadows. So somebody with some swagger and some real sort of business acumen and just and younger. I mean, they were wanting someone younger. Usually we see Scrooge as a sort of an older guy, I guess. So I got a sense that that they were wanting to do something different with Scrooge. So I had to sort of look at Scrooge 2.0.
Yeah, there is kind of like almost like in his prime, or just out of his prime, like by like a month.
Yeah, I think so.
Still got it. He's
well,
still
and then
there.
he has a
Yeah.
cocky attitude as opposed to being sort of just miserable.
Precisely. When you were reading it for the first time, because they fold in all of these new elements that are so expertly done that I myself was like, am I just not? Is this from the original? I just don't realize it because I've only seen a version with puppets. Like when we have like the interaction with Miss Cratchit, or when we have the mine scene, all these different things that are super heavy. When you were reading it, what was the first flag of like, oh, this is very different. This is intense. This is the Peaky Blinders lens that I'm looking through right now.
Well, I think even when we look at Scrooge's missing of Marley, that the friendship, I mean, in a way, if you take away what is the typically sort of cynical side of Scrooge, if you take that away and go, here is just a man who has high expectations of the human race, he actually loves and he feels and he's very passionate, etc., and you get to look at things through that lens, then here is a man who misses his best friend deeply, who's very sad about Marley not being there anymore, who's dead. He's very upset that the world is so kind of, not hypocritical, but I suppose that their focus around Christmas is so sort of single-minded. Why can't people be like that for the rest of the year? So we look at all of those things and kind of understand, I suppose, why he then behaves the way that he behaves. So I suppose for me, it was that initial part of the story where when we look at why Marley's not there, that it actually really affects Scrooge, and it's really sad. It's really sad for him.
So talk about, and I mentioned this coming out of the clip, your version of Bob is a little more loose, a little more contemporary in a way, and we get to see the frustrations that I feel like that we're not used to seeing through that character. Like I said, it just all feels more real, more human. Like, of course, he can't tell his boss that he hates him, but obviously it's Christmas Eve. I want to go home. I did the thing you said, and you can hear that in his voice. Talk about finding that line, walking right up to that line, and finding that tone for Bob.
Yeah, I think in this version he's a character, or this Bob does stand up to Scrooge more than in other iterations. He pushes back as much as he can to breaking point, whether that's through wit or sarcasm or whatever it might be. He doesn't just lie down. But at the same time, there is a fine line. He can only afford to go so far, and he can't cross that just because he's providing for a family that's already kind of rock bottom, and he has a sick son that he has to take care of, and so it's a fine line to kind of walk, and he does push it. But as the story develops, you realize there are kind of cracks and secrets within his own family that also tie back to Scrooge that Bob doesn't even know about at that point. And that's something else I liked about these scripts, that it spends more time with them, and in particular his wife, and yeah, where that goes and explores is quite dark.
Talk about too, the movie. It looks incredible. The sets, the costumes, everything. It's top-notch stuff. How far? Because you guys have done period stuff before. You did a bunch of stuff back-to-back period stuff. How far does that go in helping you get to where you need to be when you walk in and the world is physically fully realized for you?
Well, it's really helpful if it's all there, but a lot of it isn't there. A lot of it is green screen, and you don't actually sort of seeing it until until you look at the
There
finish.
a lot of green screen on this as well. Like,
There was a bit, yeah. There was a bit. I mean, a lot of the great sets were built. You know, there were obviously scenes that we did in the sort of, you know, church graveyard, cemetery area that were really there. But of course, we were also in leading up to summer, and they were spraying fake snow everywhere. So you're also having to kind of go, oh, that's right. This should all look really cold, shouldn't it? So there was a bit of work had to be done as far as us, you know, accepting that we were, you know, in this sort of like it is here outside, and not look like you are hot and sweaty in your big woolly
so were those
coat.
proper heavy coats, or was
Yeah.
it like some special like TV movie magic where it's
No.
like it looks heavy, but it's
They're
actually
proper heavy coats.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that's insane! Wow, that's pretty incredible.
But
So-
it was really great to start seeing, because obviously as we go through the story, one of the things to try and get right, I suppose, was how much should Scrooge, or how much should we as the audience feel like we are discovering a new environment? How much should it feel like, oh wow, here we are, wow, this is, you know, fascinating. And how much, as the story progresses, do we just then accept, okay, right, we're in a new world now. Now we're here. And so transitions between one set and another set, you know, had to be sort of carefully thought about as far as what sort of visual effects would be utilised to create that transformation, and also how we then react to it.
Could the same thing be said for, because it's very grounded in it, and these guys are played very realistically, but you're in a world inhabited by spirits and ghosts and magic and all these weird things. Finding that line of playing it real, but in this fantastical world, is that a delicate balance as well?
Well, I mean, it is, but at the same time, you're just on set with another actor. So you're just playing off that other actor and believing that that actor is that person. It's the story, it's the film that is saying, this is a spirit that's come back. And, you know, so obviously, and it's a tricky thing too, because on some level, the whole show is just like a tour. You know, Scrooge is sort of taken on tour. So trying to find the balance of what's freaking him out, what's not, is kind of tricky. But ultimately, yes, it should all be rooted in a reality that the person standing in front of you is now showing you something, and just because the next thing they're showing you is 15 years earlier and in a totally different place, you know, it's just the nature of the beast. Scrooge just goes, all right, I'm going back through my past.
Yeah.
It could be this now, it could be that now.
Yeah. Do you guys ever feel, I don't know, like not a pressure, but maybe because it's such a classic story, like a sense of responsibility in telling it? Or is your takes so unique and new that you're sort of liberated from those pressures of like, oh, we have to live up to we're going to be a part of this legacy forever now? Does that ever enter your head when you work on something like this?
I mean, I felt, just because I was pretty ignorant of past iterations, I didn't feel that too much, and I felt, because it was such a universe into itself that he'd written, even though it stays true to the structure of the original, that there was a freedom in it to kind of set it apart and play within that without stressing out too much. But obviously, it's a story that's been around for a long time and means a lot to a lot of people, so you don't want to bastardize it too much.
We see a little bit in the clip of that contemporary vibe, just of you two playing off of one another. Was it one of those things when you were handed the script, was every beat and word articulated there for you, or did he give you some room to make it feel loose, to kind of, not necessarily improvise, but have some freedom within those moments so you could feel like a dialogue going back and forth like that?
I think there was, I mean, it wasn't about necessarily finding a freedom, but I think there was certainly a lot for us to discuss with Nick, our director. And Nick had some very clear thoughts and feelings about where a shift might occur in a scene. But as far as the dialogue goes, I think we pretty much stuck to the dialogue, and I think that was really important, to stick to the dialogue. There was probably moments where there was too much dialogue, and, you know, Nick would have conversations with the writer about maybe stripping something back. And ultimately, if we didn't feel we could strip something back there on the day, then it can obviously be done in editing later anyway. But I think we all wanted to stay pretty true to Steve's writing, because the dialogue itself is brilliant. But yeah, there might have been, in fact there was, lots of discussions, as I say, about, kind of going, well, it feels like that's where the power shift actually occurs, but in actual fact, it's much more interesting if we find that right at the beginning of the scene, and then the rest of it is actually about a front that's sort of put on. So Nick, our director, he really is brilliant, and he really did a wonderful job of, orchestrating the journey.
Do you ever come away from a conversation like that when you get deep into those ideas and exploring those things? Do you ever walk away and like learn something about yourself, or just about how you process stuff, or how you approach situations?
Well, I just learned that I wasn't as clever as Nick. That was what I. That's what I learned. I got to the point where I went, I'm just not even going to listen to my instincts anymore, because everything he says is 10 times cleverer than what I could come up. It really, truly. I mean, he really is brilliant, isn't he? He's a really impressive human being. So I would sort of go, well, obviously this is, I'll go from here to here to here. And Nick would go, yeah, not necessarily. And I go, why? What will we do? And he went, well, how about this? He'd go, brilliant. Okay, great. Let's do that. Yeah, so just different ways of looking at things. That's right. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Well, you guys, this thing's amazing. It's so cool. It's very different from as someone who's seen one or two versions over his time. This is by far one of the most original takes and super exciting, and it takes us in new places. People that think they know this story, you've never seen it like this, and it's incredibly well done. We're going to go to the audience and get some questions before we get out of here. But real quick, one last thing. Guy, you had put out a new music video over the summer, I believe, for His Body, right? Which was like the 5th off of your second record. And I'm curious, any plans? What's going on with music? Are you working on a third album yet? Are you going to do another music video? What's going on?
With my 3-year-old, I'm finding it really hard to find time to sort of, every time I pick up the guitar, he's like, no. So he's not much of a fan. So I need to get some more film jobs so that I can be away in order to write some more music. But yeah, no, I want to keep making music as much as I can.
Still on the agenda,
yeah. Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And then, Joe, I saw a bunch of stuff on your IMDb. You got a million things coming up, man. What are you working on next? What are you excited about?
I just wrapped something a couple of days ago, actually, which was good fun. A film called The Last Letter from Your Lover with Felicity Jones and Shailene Woodley, which was cool. And did a little bit with Joanna Hogg on Souvenir too. Yeah.
Very, very cool. Well, guys, thank you so much. Like I said, we got some questions from the audience before we get out of here, so let's do those real quick. I got at least 2, so let's go for it. You got microphones? First one, do it up.
My question's for Guy. 25 years ago, I saw The Adventures of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. And it blew my mind. It was the first representation I saw of myself, and it was my introduction to queer film. 25 years ago, did you have any idea the impact of representation of the queer community of that time, of what it had on the mainstream audience?
Well, hello, and thank you for the question. Look, I had no idea when we were making the film. But when we released the film in September of 1994, and then they had taken it to Cannes, I think, in the May of that year, and I couldn't go. I was working on something else, and it got a really amazing response, and everyone went, wow, that was exciting. And then the film got actually released in the September, and we toured around the world to Rio and to Germany and to Austria and London and various places. It was during that I went, I actually think this film is more than just a film. I think this is having quite an effect, and the excitement that I felt from people as far as the film being released and it representing them to some degree was really starting to become apparent at that time, and then obviously has just continued on ever since then. I mean, the film's kind of gone down in history now for that reason, and so you really, I that's when I kind of go, wow, it was great to play that character. It was a lot of fun to play that character, but it's so meaningful to have been part of that film, which was at a point, as you point out, which was really the beginning of that kind of film, or people like that being represented, I suppose. So yeah, it certainly opened my eyes to the effect that film can have. Yeah.
Thank you for that. That's great. Let's do one more, Kate. We got another question. Come on down. You got a microphone.
Hi. I was curious if you could be a part of any other holiday remake, what would it be?
Oh, what other holiday remakes are there? What are the give me some examples. Okay.
Like if you could be in any other holiday movie if they did a remake of it. Do you know what I mean?
Call you up, they go, Guy, we're doing Rudolph.
Home Alone.
We want you.
Home Alone.
Home Alone. Yeah, we're doing a dark retelling of Home Alone.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Have you got one?
Yeah, no, Home Alone's a good one. You know what's really great? I don't know how you'd remake it, but the Snowman, you know, like the cartoon animation. Did you ever watch that? No. The one with David Bowie, he introduces it. It's like a really beautiful...
And here's the perfect guy to play David Bowie.
Yeah. I don't know how you'd remake it. In fact, you wouldn't want to touch it because it's so good. I think I'd do Home Alone. Maybe a really dark Home Alone.
I'd have to think about that some more.
Are you Pesci's character? Are you Kevin? Who are you in the Dark Home Alone remake universe?
I'll be a little kid.
Yeah. See.
But
Okay.
a little bigger.
Yeah, just a little bit bigger. Yeah. I'd pay good money to watch The Dark Home Alone. I think that'd be interesting. They've done like 20 versions of that. Why not give us
Never
a dark
enough.
one? No, exactly. Never enough. Gentlemen, congratulations. It really is fantastic work, and I'm super excited for everyone else to see it and enjoy it.
Thank
and
you
they
very
can. December 19th on FX. Check it out. It premieres. That's this Thursday, 7:30 Eastern and Pacific. A Christmas Carol. It is crazy. You are not ready for this. You got to watch it. It's amazing. Speaking of amazing, you guys are amazing. You're an amazing audience. Do me a favor. Make some noise. Join me in welcoming and thanking Guy Pearce and Joe Alwyn for being here. Come on.
Thank you.